Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Hello, Sixers, and welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. It's April 4th, 2022, and welcome to episode 106.5 Drive Time. That's right, we have a bonus episode tonight because we couldn't wait to discuss the prologue to Stormlight number 5, which Brandon surprised us with a few days ago, right before the Kickstarter ended. I am Bill, and I'm joined, as always, by my megalomaniacal co-hosts, Amy and Jordan.
I think you're going to be a little more.
Jordan, don't you dare deny it.
I forgot to turn off or turn on my microphone. So I'm not megalomaniacal. Megalomaniacal implies that I'm looking for power. I just have delusions of grandeur. Slightly different, but it's an important distinction.
I don't know. Now, before we get started, we do want to remind you, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. And so if there's something in the Cosmere you haven't read and you're worried about hearing spoilers, you might want to go read those first, then come back and join the discussion. Of course, tonight, that might be a little more difficult, but not entirely difficult, because what we are talking about, again, is an unpublished work, the prologue for Book 5 of the Stormlight Archive. Brandon has sent that around, distributed it in several different locations. You can find it pretty easily. I received mine through the newsletter. You can also probably find it on the 17th Shard somewhere, as well as in the Copper Mind, all sorts of stuff.
So you can get everything on the Copper Mind.
Mm-hmm. For our listeners who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you, it is possible for listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/InKeepersTable. We record episodes every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, so please join us, take an active part of the discussion. Now remember, this is normally an off week, so we are going to have another episode next week, and that's when the every other Monday sequence starts. So
this is how bonus episodes work.
Exactly. It's a super bonus.
Just 3 in a week.
But before we dive in, the Kickstarter funded. Brandon's Kickstarter for...
Now, which Kickstarter is this?
Brandon's Kickstarter.
Okay, that one. Sorry.
For, books and swag box and all sorts of good stuff, at a record doubling $41,754,153.
I'm sorry, Bill, I have to correct you. Brandon did nothing. That was B Money. You may not be aware that
Brandon started the Kickstarter. Brandon started the Kickstarter. B Money finished it.
My favorite part is, if you guys didn't watch the live video... Actually, no, I'll let Bill, because I was live streaming it, and Bill burst into my room in the middle of the live stream.
So Brandon, or B-Money, shows up on stream, fully decked out in, just bling, and sunglasses, and rings, and all sorts of stuff. And he says, "I am no longer Brandon Sanderson. I am B-Money." And if you looked closely, around his neck, where a rapper may say have an enormous gold medallion, Brandon had a beta Black Lotus Magic card, which is
apparently bragging rights for Magic players.
It's not apparently. It is. My goodness.
I only sort of grasp how big of a deal that is, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's an enormous deal. That's from the original release, and it was the rarest card, and it's beta. So
yeah. Oh, see, I didn't know it was beta. I missed the very beginning.
So. Oh yes, he was joined later by his wife E-Money as well.
Yes, I liked E-Money. That was funny.
It was hilarious to watch. I was so glad we live streamed it.
It was one of the most Brandon things I've ever seen too.
Yeah,
when your bling is a magic card.
My favorite thing about it, though, was them talking about the fact that oh my goodness, I just realized my window's still open. Anyway, Vamp.
Okay, well,
Closing his window, I guess.
in the same vein as of
Sorry, I had to do it for
fundraising,
the
we
train
do want to
come by.
thank our patrons. The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. Of course, we are not $41 million strong, but
No.
we appreciate you nonetheless. The show, of course, will continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. Drop $1 or $2 per episode would be wonderful. Patrons do get immediate access to the Discord, where it's a great place to talk about the Cosmere. We've got some great discussions going on, particularly right now as Brandon is just sort of flooding us with new things to discuss and overwhelming our senses.
Barely keeping our heads above water. It's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, heck, even his announcement, the whole end to secrets, and it's like, what is a secret? And is this even going to be a thing anymore?
It's kind of funny because the way YouTube gave me in the opposite order. It gave me the prologue, and then it gave me the secret. End of secrets. So I finally watched the end of secrets, and I'm like, oh, I already watched it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with YouTube. New announcements always go to the top.
Well, it gave me that one first though, so it. Anyway,
I don't know.
It was weird.
Something failed is the point.
Yes.
But back to patrons, though, you do also get early access to bonus episodes. This one is going to be a sort of special bonus episode. So they're not going to get this one ahead of time, but other bonus content, which we are working on, they will get early access to, exclusive access to other bonus content and other good stuff. For example, we did recently meet a stretch goal on Patreon where we do a monthly monologue where one of the 6 hosts spends just a few minutes of their own. We talk about a topic of our own choice. Jordan already did the one. I still haven't gotten it up yet. I'm working on that. It's going to happen soon, I promise. It's called Quick 6, even though I haven't been quick in getting it up, but it is quick to go through because it's just a few minutes long, and patrons will get access to it a week before anyone else.
Well, and then on top of it, we now have the
reading. I'm getting to that. It's in the show notes, Jordan.
Sorry, I looked away because I was closing my window and I was trying to beat a train randomly showing up. I was literally trying to beat an oncoming train.
Good job.
Oh goodness. But before we move on to that, do we want to talk more about the Kickstarter?
Oh, I still feel sad that I didn't get the swag, but it's
still open for pre-orders.
It's a lot of money. That's the hard part. And I feel sad to say it, but the Words of Radiance swag I have is just sitting in a box, and so it's really cool, it's really pretty, but I struggle to use
and that's
swag.
Fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So we decided not to do it, as much as it breaks my heart. I'll just.
But Amy, if you don't, Brandon and everyone at Team Dragonsteel will go broke.
I think they'll be okay.
41 million reasons why they'll probably be okay.
Yeah, and they were doing okay before that. So
what I loved was finding out from Brandon that this is a campaign where he was trying to make a point. It's not he's trying to overturn the entire publishing business, but he was trying to make a point.
And get back at Amazon, because they were kind of mean ones.
Yes,
apparently, he's never forgotten it.
Yeah.
Apparently he's never forgotten it. But just the fact that he was trying to make a point, I think no matter what point made, the thing that's going to work out though the best is the fact that he now knows he can do this again. The Dragonsteel team is this much more experienced, and I really hope we can get Kara back on at some point to talk about this, because I have a feeling that'd be an amazing episode.
Oh, it would be. I mean, any episode with Kara is amazing. She's a great.
She's awesome.
Interview. She's a great person. She's just fun to talk to.
And does karate in the middle of Dragonsteel Minicon.
Yes, she does. Okay, so Jordan, you were talking about the weekly read-along video. I figure we'll check in with you each episode, just see how that's going. So.
Yeah, so I finally created the room in the Discord, or you can just email us at Cosmere Studies if you'd rather do it that way. But I'm definitely, with this first episode, looking for people to make comments. If you so I'll be recording these on Thursdays and we'll be posting them on Fridays. And so if you're listening to this via the podcast, get it in today. If you're listening to this live, if you could get that, your question in the next couple days, that would be awesome.
Okay, cool.
So,
all right, so guys, Brandon shocked everyone by dropping the Stormlight 5 prologue the last day of the Kickstarter campaign.
so
Why?
anyway, here's
Because-
the intro to Starlight 5.
Because he has to outdo himself. And I'm worried at some point he's going to go supernova and kill us all.
No. It'll be wonderful, though.
But what
in
a
a
way
blaze
to go.
of glory.
Yeah, what a way to go.
Okay, so the cool thing about the Stormlight prologues is they all cover the exact same sequence of events from various perspectives and what's going on in different parts of the castle in Kholinar. Or the palace in Kholinar.
Yeah.
But and so this one, that the night of Gavilar's death, it is those are the events. And in this one we finally get Gavilar's perspective.
Yeah.
So
We haven't been waiting for this.
Before we dive in, give me your general thoughts.
Gavilar's a jerkwad. There were moments where I could see that he had been maybe an okay person, but he rationalized himself into jerkwadness. And there were other words I would probably say, but I don't say those words. So just, yeah.
At this point, he's become a monster.
He's a monster. Yeah.
I love this chapter, for the record,
Mhm.
because it's so easy to rationalize your mistakes. And so the thing I love about it is the fact that he is so realistic.
Yes.
Which
Like,
makes you
there's
hate him
no-
more.
He's
'Cause you can see
realistic,
people like him.
but he's more than real. Not just realistic though, because he has become a megalomaniac.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
that's not
yeah.
a hyperbole. Like he
Yeah.
is a
Oh, yes.
genuine megalomaniac at this point.
Hmm.
Well, it's what I love about it is you look at it, and like Amy said, like you see these moments where he's like, maybe I should, and it's like, yeah, you've moved yourself too far down this road.
Mhm.
And
then
like
he
when
snuffs it.
and when he regrets, he's like, "Oh man, I miss how things used to be between me and Navani." And it's like, "Yeah, you burned that bridge, dude. You burned it, and then you iced it over, and then just don't like that." So that's
And
it.
so, yeah, but that's what I love about this is I think the reason we all have this visceral reaction of negativity is we all know on some level that could be us. Like, if given the correct circumstance, anyone can lose their footing in
Mhm.
what is reality
Oh yeah.
and what's important. And I love that about it. I love how realistic it feels.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Okay, so the thing that I found interesting is that it's basically a sequence of interactions between Gavilar and someone else.
It's a meeting.
there-
He has this meeting and
like,
that
it's-
meeting and
it's-
this meeting and that meeting.
Exactly. And so it's sort of divided very nicely into chunks as I was making my notes. So we start off with Gavilar and the Stormfather in a vision, in a very familiar vision,
Yeah.
because this is the prelude, or the scene of the prelude of the first book, where of Aharietiam, of
Mhm.
the time when all of the heralds abandoned Taln, and we learn some really interesting things from Gavilar's perspective and from his conversations with, surprise, the Stormfather.
Mhm.
Which we
'Cause-
knew. Like, we knew the Stormfather was there, but
we didn't know he was there this directly.
yeah. Far more
Um,
directly than he was with Dalinar at the start.
Exactly. Well, and we learn why. At the very end, we hear him saying, "I'll never trust your family again." Now, I feel like that's unfair because that's, he's grouping all these people into something based on one megalomania.
And he even said about Dalinar during this, the Stormfather dead. He's like, he's got more potential than you give him credit for. So you can see
Yeah.
how the Stormfather could have seen Dalinar's growth and been like, okay, maybe I'll give
Yeah.
him a chance.
But one of
But
the
he
first things that we hear is that the Stormfather is looking for a replacement or replacement heralds.
Mm-hmm.
Because like he says, if they had been more true in life, then I wouldn't be looking for their replacements now. Well, dude.
But this is the thing I love about it. He asks about, it's like, I'm going to be a herald. And he's like, I wouldn't be looking for their replacements. He doesn't say herald. He says replacements. If you look everywhere, the Stormfather nowhere says you will be a herald. He says things that let him keep coming to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alf in our Discord mentioned a few times the Stormfather talks like an Aes Sedai, because an Aes Sedai, it's the
Aes Sedai is how you say it in the TV show, right?
I'm not going to talk about the TV show because I'll say some things that I regret.
I've read some, but anyway, I always thought it was Aes Sedai, but I am not an expert, so that's fine.
I'm explaining to Jordan what they are, not how their name sounds.
Sorry.
So they're the female, basically mages in the Stormlight Archive, or not in the Stormlight, in the Wheel of Time. But each of them is bound to never speak an untrue word, and so they find ways to talk around that. Like they don't say anything that's untrue, but they stretch the truth to the point where you can see through it.
That's not untrue.
I feel like there's some other fictional group that does the same thing. Oh, like the Fae in Jim Butcher's
Celtic
books.
lore?
Dresden Files. Like talking to them always gets interesting.
But anyway, we're talking about the Stormfather though.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing I find interesting that Gavilar points out, or kind of reveals to us, he doesn't realize it himself, is he doesn't realize that Taln died in that battle.
Yes.
So they think that he thinks that he actually was a coward who kept his blade and then wandered off into the middle of the world. He's like, so obviously that's who I'll be replacing, because he's clearly the one who's most likely to break the Oath Pact, which is pure irony, because Taln is the one who has kept the Oath Pact.
Oh, there's so much irony throughout this. I kept coming back to a phrase, strangely, from Secret History. Preservation gives Kelsier a bit of advice, telling him like the weakness of Ruin. And it's like, it's the weakness of all clever men. They don't know as much as they think they do. And Gavilar has learned so much more than anyone else around him. And so he thinks he knows so much, but he doesn't know as much as he thinks he does.
And we find out that Gavilar knows just enough to make a mess of everything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's really interesting because he keeps bringing up, he's like, are these the words? Are these the words? Are these? And he's viewing the words as basically a passcode.
Yeah, it's like, if I get the right passcode, then I get it go through. And the Stormfather's going, dude, no, you're not going to get it.
Well, and the Stormfather says clever thing, like, the words are in the way of kings. And he's like, I knew it. And it's not about the actual words. It's about living them.
Well, and at the very end, he keeps, Gavilar is frustrated and he's like, what am I saying wrong? He's like, it's not what you're saying. That's not what this means. And suddenly he's just like, wait, what? So he's thinking he just has to speak the right words, not realizing that in the Cosmere, intent is very important.
Yes.
Which is interesting when the demand, he says, is much closer. Because when you go back to Dalinar, when he swore his oaths, it was kind of a demand.
Well, and it's not just a demand, though. He also says, I need it. And like the words aren't necessarily, like, I don't know that the give it to me now is the words.
No.
The I need it, I think, is the words that the Stormfather was referring to.
I could see that.
Yeah. Well, and on top of it, you're just looking at these things as far as intent goes. And one of the most important things about the intent of it all is the fact that, like, there is all this room for interpretation. Like, we see it all over the place. The Windrunners have all sworn different versions of the same oath at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about, is your mind in the right, is your heart in the right place for it?
Mhm.
And Gavilar, there are moments where it's like you're close. Like, you
Mhm.
know, if you could get over this thing or that thing, you would be almost there. Like when he's talking to Taravangian. Like, he has this moment of where he's surprised at how much he actually means what he says.
Mhm.
And you're just like, man, if only.
Yeah.
Only.
The thing that's really interesting is, meanwhile, Gavilar is intentionally lying to the Stormfather
Mm-hmm.
when he says, he's like, and then the lie. A king's duty is to his people. By becoming a herald, I can see to Alethkar's needs in a way that no previous monarch ever has. I can suffer personal pains in order to accomplish this. This is an intentionally false statement. Gavilar says, and then the lie.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing, is because he says that at that moment, but when he's talking to Taravangian, he is surprised how much he means it. And it kind of shows like the problem with his entire personality is that he has these it's very similar to Taravangian. He has these flickers of this man that he used to be, but he keeps pushing it aside for something lesser. But because he's convinced he's trying to attain something greater.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about him.
Yep.
He's lost that piece of him that was the man trying to save everyone.
Yeah.
In a very Taravangian way, by taking over everything, and
Right.
the world is a mess and I just need to rule it kind of way. But
Yeah.
no, I this whole thing is so interesting.
So after this discussion, Dalinar comes in. And this is one of the moments where you're just like, okay, Gavilar, you know what? Just no. I'm done with you. Because the way not just the way he talks to Dalinar, because that's not really bad, but the way he thinks about Dalinar
And how he just
is
like
just
twists him and just
Well,
he's pushing him towards alcoholism. He's intentionally manipulating him and bringing up Evie at certain points because he knows that will drive him to drink.
And he even says it as like he digs a knife in just like just the right point, because he knows just the way to say it and just the thing to do. And
he sends his servant in afterwards. He's like, tell him about the
Navani's extra
secret
store of
stores that
booze,
Navani has. And tell him, lead him into that.
And he talks to the Stormfather later, and he's like, oh, he's really useful, like I either keep him drunk so he doesn't destroy things, or I let him destroy things. And he's like, that's all he can function as. And it's like, people are more than just that. And he thinks, Gavilar thinks of Dalinar being so stupid, and it's like, you have to wonder what it would be like for Gavilar to see Dalinar now.
Well,
be like, oh my, you surpassed me.
The thing I find so interesting about that is there's one moment as he's telling the story where he admits to himself, but he admits that he won't admit it, that he's terrified of Dalinar. And because we've seen things from Dalinar's perspective. And we find out that what really happened was when Dalinar went hungrily for the throne. In that moment,
almost went hungrily.
Yeah, yes, almost. Yeah,
the thrill overtook him. He saw that in his eyes, and it's one of these things. I get the impression that before that, he always thought Dalinar was this dumb, lumbering person. Which, to at least in a little bit of his defense, old Dalinar was a dumb, lumbering oaf and did everything he could to encourage that idea. But when he saw that, I think for the first time he was afraid of his brother, and it's clear he never quite got over whatever that moment was.
Because he has like a little like almost flashback or something, or just like a thought about remembering how Dalinar was that scary.
He saw the red in his eyes, and
Well, and the thing that's interesting about that is that was also a turning point for Dalinar
Mm-hmm.
in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
Dalinar recognized that and he said, from this point on, I renounce any claim to the throne in my heart. Like,
Yeah.
I will never have the throne. I don't desire the throne. And so from that point on, that's when Gavilar could have trusted him more than anything. And instead, he sees him as an enemy and works to destroy him, essentially.
Just keep him
Well, because
subservient and drunk.
it goes to the whole thing of secrets are what end up destroying Gavilar.
Mhm.
Like, he gets hoisted by so many petards in this one chapter where you're just like, if only. If only he had trusted Dalinar with his secrets, he wouldn't have feared his brother but used him as a tool. Instead, his brother was drunk by his own machinations when he got attacked by the assassin in white.
Yep.
If he had let Navani in, as his conscience is screaming at him to do, she would have been able to probably spot what's going on. She would have probably spotted the discrepancies between what the Stormfather is saying and what he's doing, because that's what she does.
And what about
If he had-
Yasna? Oh my goodness.
Exactly. If he saw Yesna is more than who
Just a
more
daughter to
than-
marry off, yeah. That part made me mad too, where it's like, if she would just behave and marry Amaram, and I'm like, oh, she would kill Amaram or something. I know she would.
Well, and most directly, Eshonai. He talks to Eshonai about, we're going to bring back your gods. We're going to bring back the unmade. And Eshonai immediately goes to her leaders and tells them about it. And they're like, we can't have this. We got to take him out.
Yeah.
And so he is directly, because he's trying to manipulate them. He's trying to send them back and, set it up so that he can go find Urithiru. And through his own manipulations, he directly leads to his own death.
Well, he didn't understand her reaction, I don't think, either.
No, because again, he doesn't know as much as he thinks he does.
Right.
The other thing is, this is all his fault, because what does he tell them? When he's showing everything off to Rastaris and Nail, he shows off, look, I was able to bring a Void Spren through. We know who that Void Spren is. That was Ulam, which Axwin Death then brought
This one probably wasn't Ulam.
No, not the one. No, he talked about it in the past. Like, he had brought one before.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And Axwin Death, that's who she brought it to Venli. Like, and so... like, literally all these things are all because he kept trying to keep secrets to himself, and the secrets destroyed him both soul and body.
No, and it's interesting though, because like Amy mentioned earlier, the Stormfather reaches out, speaks to Gavilar. He says he has more potential than you realize. And Gavilar, I mean, he's like, yeah, he's a knife to be wielded. And he's just like, no, he could be so much more. And it's just fascinating to see, especially when it's been interesting reading the Stormlight Archive from the very beginning, because in book 1, where you get so much of Dalinar's perspective, particularly regarding Gavilar's death, he idolized his brother
so much.
He put him up on a pedestal to the point where I thought Gavilar was awesome.
Yeah, and so now
with
to see
each
this,
book,
you're like,
with each book, he's just gradually gone down and down and down and down. And then you see this, and it's just like, oh, he was so much worse than we realized.
Yeah, I mean, rereading, it's going to taint everything that everybody's like, oh, Gavilar's so great. And we'd be like, no, he's not. No, he's not. Nope.
Well, and it's interesting because in so many ways, Dalinar puts people on pedestals in his family. He does it with everyone.
Yeah.
He obviously does it with Navani, but she actually has earned that.
Yes.
But Gavilar, especially.
Yeah, but Dalinar was a horrid drunk the latter end of Gavilar's life. Dalinar wasn't paying attention to who Gavilar was becoming. He was wallowing in his sins, essentially, and just not forgiving himself. But you don't get to have therapy when you're the brother of the king.
Nope.
especially not when you're the storming Blackthorn. That's your entire persona.
Yeah.
And so, but Dalinar does put his entire family up on pedestals. Does it with Navani, does it with Yesna, sort of overlooking a lot of her faults. He does it with Adolin, to the point when Adolin has to finally be like, Dad, I murdered Sadeas. But he does this with everyone in his family.
Mhm.
Whereas you see people outside the family, he doesn't let himself get as blinded. Like with Kaladin, he says, it's like, dude, I need to take you off. You're about to lose yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But he has a blind spot for his family.
And he even tries to make the best of Elokar too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which poor
And-
Elokar. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, well.
Oh.
Well, and Gavilar even talks about Elokar because he sees that Amaram is hungry for the throne, and he's just like, and he may just let him have it. After all, Elokar was certainly not the legacy he wanted to leave behind.
I know, and that's like all the screen time, or even
dude.
the reference that Elokar gets, and it's like, oh no
That's
wonder
the only
he's got
thought he
so many
pays.
problems. Just
Yeah.
And the thing is, he's not wrong about Elokar shouldn't be the king going forward, and that's part of Elokar's growth that was cut short by someone. But
it's also part of Gavilar. I mean, whose fault is that? Gavilar's his father.
Yeah, I mean, if you spend your entire childhood being disdained by your dad, that's gonna affect you a lot.
Yeah.
Or even just ignored.
Any of those things is not great.
He's justifying it to himself so much because we see the thing, because he keeps telling himself they're going to be dust. But I can't have attachments because which it's like there's some wisdom in that. If you are going to live that long, you do need to have a long view of things and not get too attached. But as Thadakar says, you're not immortal yet. Talk about putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, dude, you got to be careful.
He's so busy planning for the future, he is not looking at what's right in front of him.
Which is really funny because that's what he complains about with Navani is like, she's so focused in the nitty gritty details. She can't see the big picture. And it's like, dude, that's what you need is someone to look at the nitty gritty details for you because you're not doing it.
I just realized that's literally the love triangle, past, present, and future. Dalinar, Gavilar, and Navani. Dalinar's stuck in the past, and Navani's in the now, and Gavilar's in the future.
That's interesting.
And, yeah, I hadn't put that together till you put it like that.
That's funny.
Which is why what's the gift that is given to Dalinar? Makes him forget the past for a while so he can actually focus on
making progress.
And he becomes so much more than he was because of it.
Yeah. Because he loses all that guilt temporarily. And then when it does come back, it's given to him piecemeal so he can process it.
Okay. So Gavilar manipulates Dalinar, sends him off to get drunk, basically just destroying his brother's life because he's afraid of him.
Yep.
And then deal with him.
Destroying his best chance to kill the assassin in white.
And then he gets a visitor. There's a knock at the door. He turns around and there's a hooded figure behind him.
So have we seen
I think I made Amy noises during this.
Did we ever see a Seon make knocking sounds?
I think they have the ability to manipulate things just very slightly.
Okay, because
I can't remember.
I didn't have time to reread those
I
scenes,
got
so
the impression that they were making the sound. I mean, because they already mimic sound.
That's also possible.
That's true. Okay. Because I mean, in the scene, I was like, oh, when I was rereading, I was surprised that there was a knock, and then he opens the door, and then it's in there. But
yeah, but I mean, look, if there's anything Kelsier's gonna do, Kelsier is going to be like, okay, listen, you're gonna love this. I need you to make a knocking sound, but then go behind him. This is gonna be great.
It's about showmanship.
It matters. And I love how we all do the Italian finger thing.
I just go back to Megamind, and it's like, oh, we're both villains, but I'm a supervillain. What's the difference? Presentation.
need to rewatch that. Oh my goodness.
And he's got it in spades. Just shows up, and I love just the whole. Seems you're playing games. Yeah, well, it seems like you need me, so why don't we just keep playing games? And just the, just imagine being Kelsier, who's been playing games for at this point hundreds of years, and you get this upstart king who thinks he's some hot creme, and he's just like, okay, buddy.
This just makes me think of like all those times. Sorry, you go ahead and then I'll do
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So
go ahead.
We've all seen little kids in shows or in real life or whatever trying to be like, no, it worked out this way, and you can see right through it, and you're just like, how do I tell you that you do not have as much game as you think you do? And that's kind of what I can see the same comparison. And I'm not wording it right, but anyway, the same kind of comparison with Thydakar and Gavilar with the parent and a little kid.
Yeah.
Just the whole, no, you yeah, sure, you sound real great, but you really are missing this whole depth of everything else.
It's so much more than you realize. Yes. Silly child.
What's the line? Like there are secrets that that can tear men by their very axis.
Oh yes.
And like literally that's true. Like some of the things that they're trying to figure out could tear people apart at the atomic level.
Yeah, and that's the term that they use. Axi is basically atoms. But it's, oh gosh, first off, we get our most clear indication in book, other than the term Lord of Scars, that Thydakar is Kelsier, because he takes the hood off and you see the spike through his eye, which is how we've seen him in Mistborn Era 2 flashback stuff.
Bands of Mourning,
yes.
It's wonderful. And I still, like, obviously we have the Lost Metal coming out, and it's interesting that we're getting this because the Lost Metal will come out before we get this book. And so I'm willing to bet when Lost Metal comes out, we're going to get some context for that'll even change this a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
But I love this entire scene because we got to remember this is a Kelsier post-Secret History, obviously. And he learned some lessons in Secret History, but we also know being Kelsier, he is not going to leave well enough alone. And which leads to the whole thing of a lot of people who are worried, he's going to become a villain, to which as a Kelsier fanboy, I am totally on board with wherever he goes. I literally have the Ghostblood sticker on my laptop. So count me for Team Ghostblood, but more into the point. He actually, like, he's so much more interesting because we know the lengths Kelsier will go to do what he thinks is the right thing to do. And I think this is the slight dip, because holy cat, does Kelsier dream big and have delusions of grandeur like Gavilar? Oh my goodness, yes. And reality has done very little to assuage him of any idea that he can't move worlds. He's at this point killed 2 gods, or at least been part of killing 2 gods.
At this point, he has moved worlds.
Yes,
or assisted, or at least assisted in moving worlds, because he gave the power to Vin. Vin moved Scadrial.
Yeah, but the other thing that's interesting about him at this point is we've also seen him give up power. And he said it's a brief line in Secret History, but he says it's like then he did the most difficult thing he'd ever done, and he let the power go. Which is not something that most megalomaniacal characters would do, but Kelsier grew a lot in Secret History. Gavilar, on the other hand, is letting this, like, I think Gavilar is what Kelsier would have been had Kelsier killed the Lord Ruler.
Jordan, you said that you're on Team Ghostblood, and my immediate thought was, who are you going to call?
Ghostbloodsters.
Ghostbloodsters.
For the record, I'm not actually on Team Ghostblood until we find out that they're okay, because Kelsier really has everything under control. Don't worry about it; it'll be fine.
Oh gosh, I think I need to put a lock on the basement door.
What's the concern? I don't. Okay, if I buy a parrot, know that bad things are happening.
Oh man. One factor that I think helped keep Kelsier less megalomaniac,
Cole?
yes,
Megalomaniacal.
megamaniacal, is that he
Megalomaniacal.
like a maniac, anyway, we all know what I'm talking about. That word is that he had the team and he trusted his team, and so like he actually worked with people, whereas it feels much more like Gavilar uses people. Nobody is at the same level as him. Like he has that quote
Yeah.
which he applies to Navani about like, oh, the sun and the stars are, oh, what is that quote, dang it,
The sun
The sun can love the stars, but never as an equal.
yeah,
Or
and
never
so
as
like
equals.
it kind of feels like that, where that's how full of himself he is that he thinks that nobody's as good as me, so I have to be the only, the one in the know. I can't trust anybody. Whereas Kelsier didn't tell everybody everything, but he did trust his people more, it felt like to me.
Well, the thing that's interesting about that quote is that the stars are just as big or bigger or brighter than the sun.
Yes.
And
that's
so
what
it just it fits
didn't-
so perfectly.
you didn't
that
know
quote.
your astronomy.
That quote has another interesting implication. One, because Gavilar didn't install himself as king. Other people helped install him, and that's something Sadeas says in his. It's like I sacrificed a lot to put you on this throne. I'm not going to let you, let that go to waste.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's clear at the very minimum, it's clear Dalinar and Sadeas believe in Gavilar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
we saw that in the conversation between Dalinar and Sadeas in the first book.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but who is Gavilar and Dalinar's ancient ancestor?
The Sunmaker.
Mm.
The sun, can love the stars, but the sun, but not as equals. He's literally the descendant of the Sunmaker. Like, I think that's one of those lines that in his head he's probably thought before, because he is an ancestor of a guy who's literally called the Sunmaker.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, talk about delusions of grandeur. Holy cow.
See, I was thinking it was just one of those word evolutions where it's actually the SON maker and he just had a lot of kids.
Well, I mean, he also had that as well, and that was sort of what led to the downfall.
He's like the anti Henry VIII. Did Jordan freeze?
Yes, which
I think
means you
Jordan
guys are
froze.
freezing on stream, but don't worry about it.
Okay.
But yeah,
Um.
no, but that's the other thing. Going back to going back to to Elokar, that's one of the things that was discussed in World, that the Sunmaker's empire only lasted the one generation because he didn't pick a proper heir, and so it fell to infighting. And so you
Right.
see him here. It's like, well, not Elokar, but it's done so coldly. This isn't done with like the calculating nature of Yesna, where it's like, okay, Elokar's not really king material, or with the love of Navani or Dalinar, where they're fond of him, but they just know he doesn't have it.
He needs to be
This is done
supported
with
if he's going to have the power.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's done. He says it so cynically.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't even respect Yasna either. He'd rather just have her be the wife to the guy that he'd rather have be king.
Now, I do find his relationship with Yesna, I think, would be very interesting to know more details of, because we still don't know what was going on with Yesna as a girl. Because we know that she was like literally raving mad, where like she would like scream and stuff.
She was traumatized somehow.
Traumatized, or maybe it could just be like, like you see this with some people who are high on the autism spectrum, where as kids they scream a little bit. And I don't know what Brandon's going for here. We'll obviously get more as it goes on, but I think it's one of these things that we see how quickly he discards Elokar. I think he might have done the same thing with Yesna and isn't really noticing who she's becoming, because he made his assessment. He made his assessment on Dalinar. He made his assessment on Navani, and he's like, all right, well, this is all I see are good decisions being made here. All right, let's go.
And I also wonder if Gavilar was part of some trauma with Yasna, that she probably, if that was the case, which I suspect is very probable, then she would have hidden things from him. she would not have
There-
actually opened up to him and presented herself as she actually was, because it would have been safer for her.
There was a line in Words of Radiance where she said something about those people who were supposed to love you the most or care for you the most could also hurt you, and the context made it seem like she was abused in some way.
Yeah, we just don't have
likely by
a lot of
Gavilar.
Yeah. At
we
the
just don't
very
know the
minimum,
context of what-
emotionally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, because
But
even Gavilar at his best is such a, bull in a china shop. At his
Yeah.
best, he can
You know-
offend people.
I just had an interesting thought.
Hmm.
Because Gavilar has had communications with Scadrial, and we know that during the days of the Final Empire, a lot of nobles would beat their children to try and snap them.
Oh no.
Gavilar's trying to bring back Surge Binding. I wouldn't put it past him to do the same to Yasna, thinking she's a potential.
I can going with that theory. I could even see him literally telling her his
Mhm.
plan, and cold logical Yasna being like, that makes sense. Let's, maybe we should try that, and not even thinking about what this is going to be.
And then in the middle of it, just being
I wanna
feeling
back out of
absolutely
this.
betrayed
Nope.
and screaming and saying, stop. But at this point, Gavilar's just like, we're doing this.
Yeah, in for a
Yeah.
penny, in for a pound. That's his entire personality.
Oh.
Now,
Now,
I
this
don't
is
think
pure
it's-
speculation.
We don't
Yeah.
know, but if that's the case, this guy should have
I-
died 5 more times, 6 more times.
I wouldn't put it all past him, is the thing.
Oh.
No.
But
No.
it's really interesting seeing Gavilar's interactions with Thydakar. He at one point he says, I've grown beyond this. And Thydakar's response, you can't grow beyond the tide, Gavilar. You swim with it or get swept away. The things we've started are in motion, and to be honest, I don't know that we did that much. I think that tide was coming whatever we did.
Which that's a rare bit of humility from Kelsier. But I think
Mhm.
it's also the Kelsier that has gone through secret history and understands that he is not as big a deal as he thought he was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, he knows he's a big deal. He's just not as big a deal as he thought.
He's seen
Yeah.
a glimpse of how big the pond and the ocean is, and so he's like, even if I am this big and I'm this awesome, it's a lot bigger out there.
And let's be clear, Kelsier knows he's awesome.
Oh, yes.
But Kelsier always also knows that there's always another secret.
Which I loved that line from Vistaris. It's like, what's he after? Secrets. He cannot abide someone who knows more than he does.
Yeah.
More
The
secrets
man
than him.
can't
yes.
abide someone having more secrets than him.
And to which it's like, that's right. That's my boy.
Okay, so Thydakar then does his, I'm going to impress him exit by having the Sion dissolve, the cloak disintegrate, and the Sion
go in and
float away.
Yeah.
Which I love it. He's going into this big speech, and I love Kelsier just, and it's like, what the? And it's like, yeah, get me him. You don't want to be my enemy.
Yeah, like Gavilar's like, well, I intend to, and he's just like, nah, you're done.
That's
talking.
the other thing. He wants Ristaris.
He
Mhm.
does, and we don't know exactly what information he
No,
wants.
but we do know what Ristaris thinks it's about. He knows where Ba'ato Mishram is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I'm like, I
Which-
do not know enough about that Unmade at all.
All we know about Ba'ato Mishram is that she was able to give forms of power to the
Partially.
yes, I'm trying to remember the speakers, the listeners.
The listeners.
Sorry, it
Listeners.
took me a second.
They have,
literally
like,
the opposite.
So many names. So many names.
Yeah, but
And you were thinking of singers.
yes, and so we know she did that, and we know that they, in an act of desperation, they sealed her away in a perfect gemstone, the same way they did the Thrill, and it broke them. It broke them, and it hurt the child
Mm-hmm.
or the sibling.
Yeah, the sibling.
Now the thing that's interesting is the way that they discuss that, because he says, Ristaris says, "I know where she is hidden, where her soul is. Ba'ato Mishram, granter of forms, their other god, the one who could rival him, the one we betrayed." Okay, first off, rival him. I'm guessing they're talking about Odium, and the one we betrayed is Ba'ato Mishram.
That's
But
what it sounds like.
it could also
Mhm.
be the one we betrayed is Talent, and something else is going on. I think that it's Ba'ato Mishram, but it's just the way it was worded was confusing.
Hmm.
Well, and it's Rastaris, who has an odd way of speaking about him anyway because of his indecisiveness.
But he also refers to, you know, this happened because it was necessary. And like there's just all sorts of stuff that we don't know about the binding of Ba'ato Mishram.
Yeah.
So,
But the fact that we know, he now has made it clear that he knows where she is, and where do we end Rhythm of War with him and Shalon and Adolin? They're together.
mhm.
So
Oh.
I think I now know the Adolin Shalon plot for the next book.
Oh.
We're going Ba'ato Mishram hunting.
Oh boy.
Which would make sense, especially with the connection she has with Szeth-son-son-Vallano. That could be
Mm.
Yeah.
even
that could
more.
be interesting.
But yeah, okay. So
Well, and
we've
especially
already
especially if Kelsier if that is what he's after, and it's a race to Ba'ato Mishram, that would be the perfect side plot for what's going on.
mhm.
Yeah.
So we've already started talking about this conversation because next in the series of meetings is Kalak and Nail. Now, again, it's interesting because once again, Gavilar is so very wrong
He's so
because he
wrong.
thinks that Rastares, aka Kalak, is he's got delusions of grandeur himself, and he believes all of the heralds are dead because the Stormfather told him so.
Well,
Mhm.
the Stormfather is points out that it's like, I just sort of let you come to whatever conclusions you wanted to.
Mhm.
Yep.
But there's one point that I thought was really interesting because he's referring to the newest incarnation of Rastar's organization, which is currently the Sons of Honor, which
Mhm.
means this organization has had other incarnations. You know, this isn't a new development, even though from looking at its current structure, that's a new iteration.
It definitely fills in some gaps on what the Sons of Honor were doing, because we always thought it made no sense that they wanted to bring back the Voidbringers.
Mhm.
And especially once you knew Kalek was Rastaris. But once you understand that he's like, whoa, no, you're supposed to make men worthy again. Like,
Yeah.
and Gavel's like, nah, I found a speedrun strat for this. It'll be great.
But specifically, that line that he continues was really interesting. He said, "Before things went wrong, before I made them go wrong." I find that very interesting.
That he messed up
I-
the Radiance.
I think Secret Searcher Hiram in chat is onto something. Where he says, is Tef's family one of the incarnations of Rastari's organization?
The Envisagers. That's a very
I could see that.
good possibility.
I
They're the
hadn't
people that hurt
considered that
themselves on purpose.
I think that's a good find.
That was
that's a
scary.
very good thought. That's got my brain going. So, but yeah, it's just and then again, Rastaris says, "I've ruined it all," and then you, Gavilar, you're ruining it all too. Worse, I've done it again. I'm feeling so much worse. So it sounds like his ailment is getting worse, more enhanced, and it sounds like it does better in some circumstances, almost.
I think he's also he seems genuinely paranoid the whole scene, because you see him like going over and sniffing all the drinks, but that he doesn't drink anything, and apparently this is normal for him, because Gavilar's like, he always goes over there and tests them, but he doesn't ever drink anything. He's just really paranoid, and I don't know if it's paranoia is one of his things as well, or if it's just that's a part of his guilt and insecurity and indecision.
I also think, Jordan,
No, go ahead.
I also think it's really interesting because you can tell that Gavilar has not impressed Nail in the slightest.
Nope.
At one point, Nail is probably, ready to just take him out and just be done with him. And then he says, "You're the king. Your word is law in this land."
It's like, yeah, if we were anywhere
Which
else.
is Nail's hang up.
Yeah.
Well, so the way it even happens, I thought was very interesting, because this entire scene, Nail feels like the one that they call the Herald.
Mhm.
Like, he feels very in charge,
Mhm.
and then, like, you see him get into a point, and then he sort of just leans against the wall, and he's like, "But you're the king." Like, it almost feels like he was getting close to it, and then all of a sudden, like, the malady in like a moment takes over, which we kind of saw with Ishar,
Mhm.
where he's like has this moment of clarity and then goes back into his villainous rantings.
Right.
It's I think it's a sign of the whatever the malady is, however this works, because there is something weird. We know it's magical in nature, but there's something weird about how it enforces itself that I'm not sure about.
Mhm.
Yeah, we don't have enough information on that.
It's like you hit a threshold and then it's just like, nope, and pushes
You don't get
pushes
past
you
that.
back.
Yeah.
But I also find it interesting, the discussion that the way they've found to move void light from between Braze and Roshar is they take a sphere and infuse it, and then they put that in an aluminum box. It makes perfect sense. It's also how the Sion communicator kind of works, because there's a Sion in an aluminum box. And so somehow that severs the connection that binds these highly invested things to their locations.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of it, you also have he uses the name Rusher Chris, Rural Juror.
Rusher Chris.
Where that was the person in Navani's prologue where she said, "Oh my goodness, he's here. I want to go talk to him," but she's so busy. Yeah, because she's so busy trying to get everything going that she doesn't have the time. Yeah. Well, speaking of people hoisting themselves by their own petard. Yeah. But the thing that's interesting is that we then find out that he's in league with Gavilar.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, who would have thought Navani's little pet hobby would prove to be so useful? And then that's where he's sort of like, maybe I should. And that's like, dude.
No.
Well, and again, the disdain. He's like, her little hobby. It's just,
like, you have no idea.
And you see in Rhythm of War, when she's actually given the support that she needs, the amazing things that she's able to accomplish with her little hobby.
Yeah.
It's just, Gavilar, you're just so wrong.
And I have a feeling she did a lot more than he would give her credit for in making him king, too.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. She was dealing with people behind the scenes, and she was one of the that's another interesting thing, because Navani was one of a list of people who they used to scheme together. The list was interesting because it was Navani and Sadeas and ELA and Asudan.
Yep.
Oh.
Which is Elakar's wife.
Yeah.
So
if there's anything that we've shown, it's that the Kholins do not have a mind for the little details of politicking.
So that's maybe where she came in, is she was good for social.
Well, we see that in Dalinar's flashbacks, because we see he's like watches them as they're scheming, and he's like there and he's listening, and Dalinar says something, and ELA is like laughing at Dalinar. It's like, that's very you, Dalinar.
It's like you just don't get it.
I wouldn't say that the Kholins don't, because Gavilar has an aspect of it. He's just not as good at it as he thinks he does. But he also recognizes who could be, which is, he works with Sadeas and ELA, and Asudan is a schemer. We've seen.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds me very much like Kaladin. Kaladin or not Kaladin, Kelsier. Kelsier knew that he's good at the sort of big picture, but he needs someone like a Dachshund or a Breeze to help him with the details, because he's good at the grand scheme. The everyday stuff, that's where he struggles, and that's where, I mean, look, Navani is a logistical genius, and he seems to at least recognize that part of her, because look at what he keeps offloading on her.
Yeah, but he
The
doesn't.
running
He
of
doesn't
the day-to-day
value it.
kingdom. No, not clearly, at least not how he used to.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if he did, he would be bringing her in the schemes, because he'd recognize, maybe I need a logistics person to help with. Because like, what's one of the things he's complaining about to Amorem? He's like, these meetings are growing tiresome because his organization is growing a bit big. He needs someone who can help handle
Streamline
the
it, yeah.
smaller details. But and who takes over the Sons of Honor by at the beginning of Rhythm of War? It's Eli. It's a detail-oriented person.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of the last person in the upper echelon
Yeah.
standing. So
I just realized if there was a pairing of Echelon and Shalon, it would have been called Echelon.
wow. Oh goodness.
What
Okay.
you're hearing
so
is the train coming off the rails.
I also find it.
Sorry, do you want to go first, Bill? You want me to
No,
go
go
real
ahead.
quick? So it was just a quick. I was really glad that Brandon did not show the scene between Navani and Gavilar again, just because I feel like that would be crushing and terrible to get his thoughts as he's being so mean to her too. So for a second, I was kind of like, well, why did they cut that? And I'm like, oh wait, we already saw enough of that. We don't need to see it again. It would just be awful.
Well, and they do the same thing with Eshonai's scene. We don't see any of that either.
Yeah, we don't see that part. I'd forgotten about that more. I was like, oh yeah, he did meet with her too. He has like a day full of meetings and then he dies. So, fun times.
Yeah.
With holy crap important people just all over the place. Like, there's so many important people that he there's a whole other herald going on and no one else sees it but like Restaries.
And they do mention, they're like, yeah, there's another one running around.
I've seen her work.
Well, and we know Jezrian's around there.
Yep. Well, I think all of the heralds are there in some form or fashion.
Well, I don't think one of them is. Well, two of them at least.
Helena is definitely not there.
Right.
Well, and one more.
You sure?
The big reveal.
Remind me.
When the Stormfather's like, oh no, a herald has died.
Oh, that one.
Oh, right.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Oh boy.
So the big theory, which is one that we have ascribed to, and this only serves to support that theory,
it still traumatizes
is that Chanarach is Shalon's mother. Now, if you look, I think they've got it in the copper mine now. The dates of Gavilar's death and Shalon's mother's death are the same.
What? Oh, that's weird. I mean, you've been talking about it, but now I really can't deny it, and I don't like it.
Here's the thing,
but I don't like it.
Well, so the thing is, we've been sitting here the entire time, and we know that all the images of the heralds that we've been given are in-universe images. That we don't know if these are the exaggerations of, time, or if they are actual representations. Sorry about that. Actual representations. And so as people started banting about this theory that, she looks a lot like Shalon. Do you think? And then one of the counters was like, we don't even know if she actually has red hair. Like that's
and then
we have no clue. Well, what does he throw in the
chat with the Stormfather?
he just happens to pick up Chatteratch's
Like, it's one of his
blade. He's like,
favorites. He's like, "This
"Oh,
is a really
look
cool
at
one.
this
I like
blade.
this one.
This is yada-da-da-da."
I wish I
And
could have
it's like,
seen her
isn't
be a
this
warrior."
narratively convenient? I picked this one up and confirmed that her hair is indeed red. Oddly specific detail, don't you think? The Stormfather's like, yeah, feels like we're just setting things up, doesn't it?
But it plays so nicely, and if you're not thinking about that, you're like, "Oh, yeah, they're just talking about stuff. That's fine." And you're like, "Wait."
Okay, let me clarify. The dates of their death, it's not the same date, but because we have a range of dates, like late
Oh, okay.
1197, 1167 to 1168. And the death of Gavilar falls within that range. So it's
Okay,
not,
so it's not 100%, but probably
there's a
close.
pretty dang good chance.
Yeah, I mean, how many heralds are dying right around then? And how many of Shallan's mothers? Anyway, she
Yeah.
only has the one.
Traditionally, yeah.
Yeah, usually just the one.
So something I wanted to add to that scene where he's like looking at the blade and commenting on it. He picks up a
Mhm.
different blade at the start, and I just want to read this because it's so delicious.
Yep.
No matter, he would have his prize. He seized a sinuous curved blade belonging to the Herald Jezreel. And it's like, oh, you'll be getting your prize, buddy, sooner than you think. Because
Yeah, you're
what
gonna-
blade ends him? That one.
Jezreel's blade, exactly.
Well, technically it wasn't the blade that killed him, but, you know, it's what came
Yeah.
for him.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I noticed the portent of that.
I'd forgotten that that's the sword that was used, but I have problems keeping track of all the swords and all the things.
I also found it interesting that both Nails and Chanarach's have slots in them.
Oh,
which reminds me of what's called a sword breaker, which is basically a rod that has a slot in it, and the goal is to catch the blade in and then twist it to snap a blade in half. Of course, it wouldn't work quite as well in a blade itself, except for the fact that these are honor blades, so they can take a bit more
break.
Physical damage.
Not unless they go up against a Nightblood.
Yeah.
And as far as we can tell, there's one, maybe two of those floating around.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so after Gavilar has another chat with the Stormfather, Orem and the Sons of Honor come in. And who is with the Sons of Honor, Jordan? What's his name?
The most interesting man in Roshar.
The
Taravangian. Oh, such the little king.
Their exchange is very interesting because Gavilar, as he does with many people, has completely written Taravangian off.
Well, and this is another one of those. In his defense, everyone has written him off.
Right.
By design. Taravangian makes sure he's as unremarkable as possible.
Yep.
But I love this exchange. He says, Taravangian compliments on the speech, and then he says, "Do you actually believe that?" Gavilar says, "Would I say it if I didn't? Of course you would. A king will say whatever needs to be said. Wouldn't it be grand if that were always what he actually believed? Yes, grand." Gavilar sort of begins to reevaluate him, and then he says, "A danger is coming to this land, this world, an ancient danger. The desolation is near, the Everstorm, the night of sorrows." And Taravangian visibly pales because those are the exact words that his mother spoke as a death rattle.
Well, and it's interesting because when he said, this is when he's being his most sincere at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that the same thing that destroyed Taravangian's soul is the same thing that, now in a different way, has destroyed Gavilar's soul.
Mm-hmm.
Once you think the end of the world is at stake, so much is suddenly put on the table that you never would have before.
Mm-hmm.
And you're willing to make moral equivalencies you wouldn't have before. Now, with Taravangian, he sacrificed his soul in that he was willing to do horrible things in the name of defending everything. Gavilar let the greatness of defending everything become his excuse for, this is why I need to rule everything. And it's
Mhm.
like, oh, how convenient. The guy who likes to rule everything's found an excuse to rule even more of everything.
Yeah,
Mhm.
everything just got bigger.
Yeah.
The thing that's interesting though is that shortly after that, when Gavilar, like after sort of having that moment with Taravangian, Gavilar starts realizing I may not be up for this on my own. Perhaps I should start encouraging Dalinar to practice again and build up. It's just like too late,
Yep.
because that's exactly what you needed, is your brother beside you.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't it interesting that what brings out the best in Gavilar, very similar to Dalinar, was Taravangian? Like
Mhm.
these conversations with Taravangian were so good for the Kalin, someone who understood that weight of leadership. Like that's sort of the therapy they need. Unfortunately, the one giving the therapy is the most evil person, or most awful person, I should say, on all of Roshar. But you know, given the sins of the Kalins, maybe that's not too big a stretch.
Oh man.
Those two have a black book that, or not black, or they have so much red in their ledger. That's what I'm going for. Black book. That's a
Mhm.
different thing.
Yeah, that's a dating thing.
Yeah, that's a very different thing.
Oh yeah.
But
Hmm.
then of course he has another important chat with the Stormfather,
Mm-hmm.
where he asks him for the second time that evening, "Do you regret choosing me?" And the Stormfather's response is, "I regret the way I have treated you. I should not have been so accommodating. It's made you lazy," which Gavilar takes some offense to.
This is lazy.
But the storm, but the Stormfather says, "You do not consider with reverence the position you seek. I
Mhm.
feel you're not the one I need, the one that I decided to find." And it's,
Mhm.
having seen his interactions with Dalinar after this, it really makes that an interesting exchange. And it brings a whole new context to his interactions with Dalinar.
Yeah.
Also, he asks Gavilar why he's not concerned by the fact that by becoming a herald, he'll be bound to return to Braze and be tortured over and over again.
Mhm.
And Gavilar's response just, it takes the
Oh.
Stormfather back, because
Yeah.
it's a very pragmatic, cold, and only partially informed response, because he says, "I'll just give in."
Here's the thing. I don't think this plan is as bad as the Stormfather thinks it is. That morally, it's a problem.
From Gavilar's perspective, it's not.
No. Well,
But that's
especially,
because Gavilar has a flawed perspective, and
yeah.
the Stormfather calls him out on it.
Well, the thing is, Gavilar attacks what is the biggest problem with the plan is that they lose immense human capital with this with the plan that they've been going with by staying in Braze, because the heralds are the people most qualified to defend the world and to
Mhm.
lead the world, and by just sticking around, what happens every single time? They always go into a dark ages. And in the end, the plan that they came up with was the one that was the best plan, because as Talon says when he has his moment of clarity, is like, what a wonderful gift to give them
Mhm.
this time to rebuild. And so
Mhm.
Gavilar is onto the kernel of why this isn't as bad a plan, but he's missing again the whole context of
Well,
he doesn't know as much as he thinks he does.
Gavilar is a true Alethi. And the thing he doesn't realize, the dots that he doesn't connect, are that it's not the end of the war that leads to the Dark Age. It's the war itself. He's thinking, we'll just live in perpetual war. That's fine. Now, I don't know how much of this is him performing for the Stormfather and how much of this is his actual plan, because it sounds like he's planning on, more beyond that. Like he's seeking godhood. He's not just seeking to be a herald. He's seeking something beyond that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But even what he says to the Stormfather is just completely colored by his perspective as an Alethi, from that war like culture.
Mhm.
Because he's just thinking, we'll live in perpetual war. War hardens you. War makes you stronger. And
We'll be fine,
Taln, meanwhile, who was, I believe, the Herald of War, wasn't he?
I believe so.
Shoot, I
Yeah,
can't remember.
he's the one who realizes that this 10,000 years of peace, of
Is really good.
relative peace,
Mm-hmm.
is something that will allow the world to recover.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of it, you have the fact that he because he's just thinking of, we could just, like, okay, they keep coming back. I'll just do this until there's nothing left for them to come back to. His whole idea is, I will grind them down into nothing because I will have an eternity to do so.
Right.
And that's why he's sort of like, why did the Heralds never think of this? They live forever. But he doesn't think of the human cost to that, because again, he's, oh, I'm going to live forever. What, this is just the cost of war. And it's like, yeah, that's the problem, is you don't have infinite resources.
You don't have infrastructure that just magically comes back.
Well, he just completely misses the reason for the Oath Pact in the first place, because what he is planning to do is essentially negating the Oath Pact, but just giving an eternal warrior to continue to fight those battles. But yeah, the world cannot withstand that forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's a very, he's used to being able to just grind people with better skill, better resources. And it's like, you don't have that.
Yeah. You don't know what you're up against either. Because, I mean, if you have... a normal person does not do as well compared to...
he's thinking, okay, I can fight Parshman.
But it's like, oh, buddy, it's a bit more.
Yeah, he doesn't realize
he doesn't have
he
doesn't have the real context. Yeah.
No. Well, in point in fact, like, it just shows like how short-sighted he is. He brings Ulam into, he essentially brings Ulam into the world, and it's like, if they're willing to let you do that, don't you think that's a mistake? The enemy wouldn't just let you do something that's a problem for them. They seem to think this is a great opportunity. Like, that should be, and that again, had he brought Navani in, Navani be like, sis, what do we think? Listen, because like he needs someone with a second opinion. Like, that's he's so missing all the perspective. And you compare that to Dalinar, who not only did he have people writing the visions down, he's bringing Navani and Yesna into the visions with them. Look at this. What do you think about that? Oh, well, that's interesting. What about this? Like, Yesna's like, I place it at this date, and that lends some interesting context to what this could mean. And suddenly she, there's all this he's learned, but because he's keeping it to himself, he only knows what he knows, and he doesn't ever get to learn what he doesn't.
Yeah.
Oh man. And then the Stormfather, the Stormfather just basically is like, I'm out of here. Y'all, we're not working together. This is,
I screwed up. I'm not doing this right now.
I'm not working with you. You were absolutely the wrong choice. And then of course Gavilar, he says, "What are you?" And he says, "The biggest fool of them all, and the thing that is miscalculated." And it's interesting because if you read it, it shifts into the capital text. It was originally just just in italics, everything that the Stormfather said, but then it shifts into the
all caps
official speak, the unite them font, this really big heavy font. And he says, "Goodbye, Gavilar. I've seen a glimpse of what is coming, and I will not prevent it. What is coming? Your legacy."
Not ominous.
Not at all.
Yeah, and then it's Sadeas saying, "It's an assassin." So yeah.
Sadeas comes in. It's interesting because Gavilar is wearing Sadeas's shard plate when he's attacked.
Yeah.
I found that interesting. And then of course we skip over the major assassination scene and end up and start again with Gavilar on the ground looking up, and it completely recontextualizes his final words, because Szeth is there and we think he's speaking to Szeth, but he's speaking to the Stormfather. He holds up the orb and says, "You have to, keep this from them, hide it. They can't have the. And I'm wondering, I don't know if this is a typo. They're calling it void light, but this looks like the anti-void light sphere.
I don't think he'd figured out anti-void
He
light.
probably may
Okay.
not know. Yeah.
Well, we know that the sphere had anti-void light in it because Navani had her people experiment on it, and it exploded when they ejected it with void light.
Do we know? I'd
Or
have to double
Stormlight.
check. Does anti-Stormlight look different from Stormlight?
I don't think we ever really heard that specifically.
Yeah, and so that's my question is, because we know that they're the same wavelengths, just slightly shifted, and you can't tell the difference in a phase shift with your ears or your eyes. They don't, you don't see it. And so I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I can't imagine Gavilar figured this out.
Well, again, we know that he did, because it was that sphere that he gave to Szeth that Navani had them experimenting on, and it exploded. She told them to inject, to infuse it with void light, I believe.
Well,
and it exploded. We basically had an antimatter explosion in that lab.
Yeah, I don't know how he got it, because that's the thing. Because it's very clear at the very minimum. Because Raboniel had to have Navani make it, so Raboniel didn't know how to make it.
But and again, Gavilar was working with Rusher Chris, who was, he'd been studying this kind of stuff. So I think that he may have discovered it.
To which I want to know what happened to Rusher Roger. I want to know what happened to him, because if he figured that out,
or
who
he is.
Yeah, they went to the wrong person. They should have gone to him, because Navani had to completely refigure it out, and someone on the planet already knew it, already knew the secret. Someone knew it. Yeah. No, but it's so he's talking to the Stormfather and not Szeth, and it's interesting. You see his thoughts as he's fading. He's just like, "What was this for?" And he starts to realize he wasted everything. And he's like, "You got it. Oh no, I've said." He's suddenly realizing what a horrible thing he's done, and he's like, "They're gonna need a warrior. Get this to my he suddenly that thing that the Stormfather said. He finally admits to himself that Dalinar's the solution. Dalinar can do this. Now, it's still because he thinks he's only a warrior, but he at least starts to have some inkling at the end.
It's also he's set all this stuff in motion, planning to be there to guide it and direct it and make it all work out. Suddenly, he started this chain reaction, and he's not there to fix it. He's like, somebody needs to handle this. Give it to Dalinar. And I like that. It's interesting. Again, if you read the text version, and Brandon handles this in his narration as well, it doesn't just say, "Tell my brother he must find the most important words a man can say." It says, "Tell my brother he must find the most important words a man must say." He has to find the words that I've been looking for. I can't find the most important words a man can say, so he has to do it.
So we've been making these comparisons, or mostly me, have been making these comparisons to Kelsier and the difference between these two men. Gavilar set a plan in motion for him to be there the entire time and take care of it. Kelsier set up a plan for everyone else to finish his work. And you want to say, what's the difference? Because Kelsier is a broken man and a very dangerous man. What's the difference between the two? That's the difference. One of them trusts others.
The other thing that's interesting is he's looking for the most important words a man can say because he wants to become a herald. He's saying Dalinar needs to become a herald. And then the Stormfather's response is, "No, not him. I'm sorry, Gavilar. I will never trust your family again. I made that mistake once. I will not do so again." And
but you kind of will.
But again, you see why he's so hesitant with everything that Dalinar has to pry everything from him, and you understand why now, because he was just so wrong with Gavilar.
Yeah.
The other thing, I like getting his perspective on, he's like, "Oh, this is clearly Thadakar. Only Thadakar could do something this cool." And And it's like, I don't know who that is. He's like, what? It's like, yeah, the parchment sent me. What? That makes no
It's like, what?
sense. Like, it's
Of all the people
Well,
that
and
did not
then
come as yeah.
because he doesn't think anything about the Parshendi. Like,
Yeah,
he's
that
so
conversation did
dismissive.
not yeah.
Mhm. Well, and then the final line that we get is just like so. It's very cathartic. After just being so mad at Gavilar for this entire chapter, it says, "And in the end, Gavilar Kholin, heir to the heralds, died, as all men ultimately must, alone."
And it's like,
And it's just like, oh.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the thing. He was trying to do it alone, and
Mhm.
Dalinar is working with his people.
Yep.
Much like an author who, working with a great team, somehow turned $1 million Kickstarter goal into a $41 million record doubling
Yeah.
event.
There's one more thing I think it'll be very interesting to know if we ever get to, because he's like, that makes no sense. Who's going, he's thinking his long list of enemies who killed him. Like, that makes no sense. There's one other person who'll be very surprised to find out that the Parshman killed him. It's going to be Thadakar. Thadakar's going to be like, what?
What?
What happened? What did he do? Why did they? What?
It's like, if all the
That doesn't make any sense. And then there's Gavilar on the other side of the beyond. That's what I was saying.
I wonder if we're right and Chanarach turns out to be Shallan's mother.
Mm-hmm.
Did the Ghostbloods know who she was?
That'd be interesting.
Because we know that
don't know.
that her father was a Ghostblood. But did
Or at
they
least
know?
was dealing with them.
Well, he had the tattoo.
Oh, did he? Okay, I couldn't remember that part.
I'm almost certain he had the tattoo.
I know the butler did.
Yes, but I thought that he. I can't remember.
You know what?
No,
I'm gonna
okay,
look.
But yes. So did they know that she was Chanarach?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and knowing she's Chanarach and knowing that Nail and the Skybreakers were looking for people who bonded Spren.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the Skybreakers had a lot of things to do with the Devar household. There's all suddenly there's all sorts of like, there's a lot going on with this family that literally has ties to like 3 different groups at the same time.
And how many personalities did Shallan?
Oh boy.
The rule of 3.
There must always be 3 Shallans.
Oh gosh. But what does that mean? Because we just absorbed one. Is Formless coming back?
Oh boy.
Guys, so much happened in this. Like, this wasn't just, oh, here's a little prologue. There was so much in here. And in my opinion, this is one of the better written things that Brandon has done. I feel like this was actually very well crafted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How often is it like a good read to read from a horrible person's perspective? It's typically not that fun. Like, I never would say it's fun to read the Moash chapters or the Terror.
I mean, the nice one with this is we get to see him die. So that's
Yes.
that's a bonus.
Not just that. The nice one with this is that we know that he's
the whole
he's
time.
each of these.
Yeah.
Every single thing he does, you're just like, and you're gonna die. You're just like,
He's gonna wait
every
for that,
single step.
But I'm like, but tell me your secrets first. I need to know that first.
Well, it's something that Brandon does talk about with his writing, how in order to make someone more likable, you can move these sliders around on their character. And I think it's also true with how evil you can make your villains. You can make them more unredeemable if you know they're getting their just desserts. Like, the only reason you can even stomach getting through the second Mistborn book with Strath Venture there, who is, I still feel, the worst person in all of the Cosmere. The only reason we put up with it is because he gets vivisected by Vin and he sees it coming. Like that's the only the only reason we put up with the fact that his horse dies too. It's like, yeah, but he's so evil, the horse also has to die.
It's like in The Princess Bride, when they're, you know, as the book is going on, suddenly the grandson just freaks out. He's like, that's it. Who gets Humperdinck? What? Who kills Prince Humperdinck? He's just like, I just need to know.
Okay.
I just need to know that at some point something horrible happens to this horrible person. And it's a play on that concept that you were talking about with the sliders and how tolerable or how evil you can make somebody. And he's just like, okay, at this point he's so evil, he's got to die. And you know, the author subverts it, but that's kind of what The Princess Bride is all about, is subverting all these different tropes and all sorts of stuff. But
whereas Brandon's
yeah,
about
it's
promises. And by making someone horrible, Brandon's promising that at some point they get theirs.
Except that, again, with him, that's the second thing that we see in this entire series. First thing we see is Ahari Edium. Second thing we see is Gavilar dying. And we see it at the beginning of every single book.
I'm going to watch him die again and again and again.
Has Brandon said that he's going to keep on this train for the second set of 5? Or are we getting a different scene?
I don't know.
Oh, we're getting a different. So Brandon has said, I think this is the last of the Gavilar's death chapters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brandon has said as the Radiants are to books 1 through 5, the Heralds will be to books 6 through 10.
So it might be different. A big Herald scene.
Maybe it'll be the telling of the final battle.
Or
it could be Aharetium. You know, because in the prelude to book 1, we got Kalek's perspective, but it's just a conversation between Kalek and was it Ishar?
I don't remember who.
No, Jezrien.
Yeah, I think it was Jezrien.
Between Kalek and Jezrien, and but you know, we haven't seen the perspectives of any of the other heralds on that.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we got something like that.
And if they do that, I bet the last one is Talm.
Ooh.
Or Ishar.
Yeah, it's got to be one of...
Because it was Ishar's idea.
It has to be one of those two.
I think you're right.
Similar scene is to Gavilar. We need to see what happens.
No. Yeah, there was so much, and it's really good.
And I know
it's got me so hyped.
I know there's gonna be stuff that we're gonna look back later and go, "Oh, how did I miss that thing or that or that?" It's
nope. I'm right about everything. I got it all.
Oh,
I agree.
But there's so
I will get no comeuppance on this.
Nope. Nobody will clip that.
So much humility, guys. So much humility.
Humility's wasted on the people who don't have delusions of grandeur. No,
man.
No, but the other thing that makes this thing so good, as far as it's just the way we got it, out of the same way we got the Kickstarter, out of nowhere.
There it is.
Nah, that's stupid. Anyway, here's the prologue to Stormlight 5.
Oh man,
love it,
Brandon.
All right, well,
you master of the craft.
Thanks, Indeed. YouTube, for messing up my delivery of those videos.
Well, we love hearing from our listeners, so please keep sending in questions. You can ask us about the Cosmere, or you can drop us your ideas for topics you'd like us to discuss during the show. While you're at it, please give us some feedback about how you think we're doing, either by email or in a review, as well as any other interesting theories you might have about what's going on in the Cosmere. You can send all questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com. We've also got a P.O. Box at the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. And we've also got our own personal projects that we're working on outside of the show. Amy, where can people find you if they want to see your stuff?
So my Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp because my name is too long. My Instagram is @Coincidence_Cosplay, and my TikTok is @CoincidenceCosplay, and it has like 4 videos. My website is www.coincidencecosplay.com as well, and I have been terrible at posting. I haven't posted for like most of March, and then I still haven't posted anything yet. And I'm not likely to post a whole lot this week because I'm painting a room in my house. So that's going to take up a lot of my time. But very soon I will finish up my Nazgul and then it will be exciting. So, yes.
Cool.
Real life.
Jordan, how about you?
I'm actually going to push my YouTube channel. Just it's Splice Stream, same as my Twitch channel over on YouTube. I mentioned this last time, but have a new video up. It is the first ever edited video for the Amiibo Raid Boss Tower. I'm quite proud how it turned out. I had an editor help me out with it, and actually she did most of the work, but I created the content. I don't know. Point is, I thought she did a great job. I think you'll laugh. I laughed. But, we already talked about my delusions of grandeur. The other thing I want to promote is, again, we're doing the reread of Era 2 of Mistborn, starting with Prologue through Chapter 3 of Alloy of Law. If you are one of our patrons, I really need questions to answer. This is going to be highly experimental at the start. So if you have the time, please reread those chapters. Doesn't take too long. It's only a prologue and 3 more chapters. And that's about the length we'll have every single time. Give it a shot. I think you're going to have a good time because I don't know about you, but I have to really remember what the crap is going on in Era 2 before Lost Metal comes out.
Also, if you chime in now, since it is experimental and Jordan's sort of figuring his, getting his footing on this, you may be able to help form it, guide it, make it something great. So. As for myself, though, I have another podcast with my friend Dylan where we talk about board games. It's called The Innkeeper's Table, and we have new episodes come out Friday mornings. I already pitched our new episodes last time. This is a bonus episode, so I don't need to go into details. For those of you who do want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, but you cannot become patrons, we would love it if you just let your friends know about the show. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies. And if you want to toss us a good review wherever you listen to it, we would love that. That would be awesome. Also, head on over to store.streamelements.com/Cosmere Studies to buy SICS merch. Cups, blankets, phone cases, all sorts of shinies. All right, guys, final thoughts on this prologue before we head off for just 1 week.
I'm so glad Gavilar's dead. He needed to die.
I'm intrigued to see when we do get Lost Metal, how that changes this.
Oh, boy.
Janaratcha Salon's mother, staking the flag.
Oh,
I mean, I already staked my flag. I'm reinforcing it now.
You're just putting it in there tighter, yeah.
Yep. Special thanks to our patron producer, Mim's Laundry Service. When you work with us, you can be confident that when you wear white on the day you are to kill a king, no one will be able to tell the next day. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions for the show, email them to cosmerestudies@gmail.com. This was a bonus episode, so our next episode is still on track to be a discussion of Secret Project number 4. So be here live when we record at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, in 1 week on April 11th, 2022 at www.twitch.tv/InnkeepersTable. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.